evening, friends. A good evening it is. Good to see you all here. Welcome. One more night of Vespers. Tomorrow night's going to be hymn sing. So I hope we have a lot of people here and bring your singing voices. But for now, let's warm up with a hymn of your choice. Just somebody yell out a number. Well, not any number. Find a hymn you want to sing and yell out its number. Say again. 323. What is it?
Turn your eyes upon Jesus.
323.
Now that's good.
Well, you know, it might work.
It's the new turn your eyes upon
Shall we hear from the choir?
Something else. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
can we? Lee. Where is Lee? We asked 3 of our members. Got to be real close, right? Yeah. We asked 3 of our members to share with us some history of the past year, and all 3 members are parents. And we who don't have kids at home, which are many of us, didn't really appreciate the rigors that you must go through when COVID hit, and all of a sudden you're the teacher and you're still the parent and you got to go to work. And I'm sure the coping mechanisms that you all have gathered this past year have been significant and different. So we asked 3 parents to share their experiences with us. Lee is the first, Lee DiGiulio.
So we didn't know the order, bear with me. First of all, I'll just say I am a mom to 3 boys. We had the experience of home colleging, home high schooling, and home 3rd grading. So we hit every grade level. Everyone working from a laptop, listening to Zoom calls, having logins at certain times. I did get some emails from the 3rd grade teacher. Please log in at 9 o'clock, Mrs. DiGiulio. We were starting right at 9:05. So sometimes we were a little bit late. Also, my husband Scott and I were working full-time from home. So part of that means different locations for everyone in your household so that you are not on top of each other and speaking at the same time, particularly for me because I was appearing in court and I could not have tuba playing in the background or the noise of a 3rd grade class who was always speaking and never on mute. There were many, you hear it on all of our Zoom calls, please mute yourself. The number of times a day that I feel a teacher had to say that was excessive. So it was, I think that was a difficult piece. First of all, finding space in what is not a large home for us, for everyone to have some level of privacy. I think the headphone business was probably thrilled with us because we've probably ordered at least 4 additional pairs of headphones to use during COVID. Simon, who's here tonight, asked me what I'd be talking about. I told him I'd be talking about what it was like doing school during COVID. Simon was in our kitchen area on a computer, and I was in the dining room working so that he could be supervised. I believed I didn't have to supervise the college student and the high school student. We'll see. Everybody passed, so I guess it went okay. I wanted to be able to listen, to hear what was happening in the classroom, to make sure that he was still sitting there, but also try to work. That was a new role for me, right? I wasn't supervising my child all day in school. And for a lot of parents, I think that was a new role for them. It was also unclear how much we were supposed to intervene because much like all of you, it was just all of a sudden we were doing school at home. And there were very limited instructions other than logins and millions of passwords to different things. And so I would listen to Simon's classes. I frequently told him he couldn't use the headphones because I was afraid that he'd be listening to something else instead of his teacher. So I would say, you have to have the sound on so that I can hear. I would frequently holler, sit down. One day, Simon had taken all of our Post-it notes and made a cartoon across the front of the computer and across the top and on the bottom. But I learned that a lot of skills from asking other teachers, he needed things to do while he was sitting there. So we started doing Play-Doh, right, Simon? And some twisty, spinny things. We were asked when we were asked to tell you about what it was like during COVID to kind of talk about how we related that to our faith walk. So for me, trying to figure out what my role was with some limited instructions from teachers made me think about my faith walk, where I'm often wondering, what is my role? What am I supposed to be doing? What does God want me to be doing here? I realized, and I think Scott would echo this, that for teachers, it's enormous responsibility to try to be meeting the needs of 12, 15, 21 students who are all asking questions at the same time, which in a Zoom setting is very difficult. As you know, that's why the meetings in our Zoom session for business were very draconian. I know some people were like, wait, we can only talk for 2 minutes. We can only talk one at a time. We're going to be muted. Again, you've seen the energy level of these children on the campground. If they're sitting in a chair and running around, if they're sitting in a chair and not able to run around and move it like that, the energy level, it's coming out their mouths. So they're speaking constantly to the teachers. And you're learning a lot about them. And I was learning, I'm so glad I didn't become a teacher. It was not my calling at all. And I know I've taught a lot here at Bible school, but I think a few hours in Bible school is a little bit different than many hours in a classroom. And trying to learn and understand the needs of all students. One particular student that I got to know, besides Simon, who needed to focus a little bit, was Ralph. Ralph asked a lot of questions, often, to all the teachers. Simon switched from class to class, so he would stay in his seat, but the art teacher would come in the classroom, or the English teacher would come in the classroom. So they did an art project one day in which I think she was trying to help them with learning to be able to express themselves even though they were wearing masks. So they had sent home a paper with some smiley faces and some frowny faces and some angry mouths, and you needed to have popsicle sticks and colored pencils and glue or tape, all which was sent ahead of time. Of course, I did not put that together ahead of time. So of course I was working, and I'm sure this was the experience of many other parents. And Simon would run in and be like, I need tape. I need a popsicle stick. Oh, fine. I thought too of a lot of the clients I serve that didn't have those things at home. So now teachers are sending things home and they can't even do the projects because the stuff isn't there. Fortunately for us, I'm a pack rat, and there was plenty of art supplies and junk around for him to collect. So we were coloring things. The art teacher, very strict, would give instructions. Again, nobody's really listening and asking questions during the instructions, and she's trying to answer one person at a time. And Ralph starts to say, can we draw eyes? And I don't hear any answer. And things are going on, and I look, I see Simon's not listening. And then every 5 seconds, can we draw eyes? Can we draw eyes? Can we draw eyes? Miss P, can we draw eyes? Can we draw eyes? I think probably 6 or 8 minutes, would you say, Simon? Oh, it was a long time. And I wrestled with what I wrestled with a lot of the time during COVID parenting, watching on screen. Do I get involved? Is this my role? If I was in the classroom, I couldn't just shout out, yes, you can, or no, I don't think she wants you to yet. I wasn't even sure what her instructions were, which was also a major complication for parents. I love you teachers, bless you, but many of the time I was wondering too, can they draw eyes? Does she want them to? So I'm thinking, do I go in and say something? Will he even, and I realize I come over and look and I see that it's the smiley faces and the popsicle sticks. So eyes aren't involved in this project. It's for masks. Can we draw eyes? Can we draw eyes? Can we draw eyes? And I can't stand it anymore. And I'm a talker, lawyers, talkers, right? I finally break the seal on the parent interruption in the COVID classroom session because I can't let Ralph go anymore wondering whether or not he can draw eyes. But now I have to decide, there's this authority figure, right? The teacher, does she want them to, does she not? I think it's art, we should encourage some expression here, right? I feel like I should say yes, but the art teacher, as my 3 boys will certainly tell you after this session, perhaps wasn't as artistically inclined to allow freedom of artistic expression. And again, I reminded myself, if I was in the classroom observing, I would have had to be just sitting there. And Simon was actually doing the project for the first time in a long time instead of doing something else. So I also thought maybe I shouldn't even go in the room because I'm letting him get engaged. Can we draw eyes? So I finally unmute Simon. And I'm standing behind him. I say, Ralph, you can draw eyes. And I see him look around, right? Who's talking? This is Simon's mom. I said, you can draw eyes. I don't think Miss P heard me because I think she was still stressed about doing other things. Relating back to my faith walk, this made me think whether I listen and plan for everyone that I encounter in the way that I need to encounter them. I knew from listening to Ralph for about 4 weeks before that if Miss P had just said yes or no the first time Ralph answered, he would have stopped asking. And I could have worked, and everyone could have learned the instructions about what they were supposed to do. But she didn't. She ignored him. Maybe because she was doing something else, because teaching 21 kids on Zoom is a nightmare because they're also in the chat sending messages to each other and doing other things and not asking about the project. So she's telling them, if you keep staying in the chat, I'm going to have to shut it down. But it made me think about how do I plan for everyone? Did I jump in there because I needed to? Was it my role to do it there, even though I felt like it wasn't? Should I have jumped in sooner? Would that have benefited that class more? None of the children jumped in because they were used to Ralph asking repeated questions. And I had asked Simon before I said anything, is she going to answer him? He said, no, he's annoying. No. And it was annoying, which is really probably what ultimately drove me to come in and dispel it. I also thought about how Ralph wondered where that voice came from, right? He knew it wasn't another student. And I thought about in my faith life, when I hear voices, sometimes I heard somebody say this morning, I know God's voice. I recognize when God's talking to me. I do sometimes, but I don't always recognize when God's talking to me or who's speaking to me. And this made me think of that too. Can we draw eyes? Does God wait to intervene sometimes? Is it the same as Ralph waiting for the answer to the question? Do we always need the answer right away? Lots of difficult things to think about when you're walking your faith life and navigating it and you don't have instructions or specific rules, although you have some, I know, from our Bible study. So that's a little taste for you of our COVID experience, how different it was, how that adaptation was, how difficult it was to figure out where to be. And I feel like that related very much to a religious walk and trying to figure that out. Ralph did draw eyes, and I should have brought some nice, cute, smiley faces. And I give kudos to the teachers who came up with projects that, for the most part, had supplies at home and things that the children could use, and gave them a way to express through a mask when they returned to school. So that's our COVID school experience, and our family now jokes around a lot of the time when people are pestering or asking a lot of questions. We go, can we draw eyes?
Thank you, Lee. I hadn't really thought of this from the teacher's point of view, but how frustrating this must have been for a year, the teachers. Wow. The second person we asked was Al Durrell Jr. Now, Al couldn't be with us, but he recorded our little conversation right out here, and I thought I'd play it back.
Al, we've asked a couple of people, how has life been and how has it changed for you this past year? We who don't have kids don't realize how hard it can be. But we'd like to hear your perspective of life during COVID with a child.
It has been a challenge. That is the biggest word I can think of, is a challenge. I can distinctly remember in March of 2020 sitting in a waiting room at my son's Taekwondo class. Suddenly everyone's phones started to ring at the same time, with the school district telling us that school would be closed until after spring break. And the panic and the audible gasps in the room is something that will stick with me for a long time, because everyone who's a parent knew that that meant that they were suddenly going to have children they had to take care of and somehow concentrate on their jobs. And I was in a particularly difficult spot because my son Christian has special needs and he goes to a specialized school. And and there's my son yelling in the background. And it's a constant struggle trying to coordinate really 3 full-time jobs, one of which is teaching him, one of which is being a lawyer, and the other is being a parent. I spent a lot of time setting up my kitchen with a school and a law office, and still trying to get laundry done, and it was a very hectic period for everyone involved. Very stressful. There were a lot of times when prayer was needed, and it was probably one of the only things that got me through it. It was, I think I had told someone at one point that it was the most stressful thing I have been through in my life, and there have been a lot of stressful points, but to take on that kind of a responsibility to so many different people all at once on your shoulders, it was a lot. And it was good to have the thought that God was there on your side, and constantly telling myself that God doesn't give you anything you can't handle, but God certainly had a sense of humor in 2020 if he was watching us all, see what we could handle. Al,
I asked the second question.
I hear you. Teacher, lawyer, parent. I think I could do one of those. I don't think I could do 2, and I hope I never have to try to do 3. But Al, I'm going to put you on the spot. If we have to go back to this kind of mode again for a couple of months or maybe even more, and that may happen, what have you learned that you can carry forward? How would you do it different? And what's life going to look like if we have to do this again?
Well, I think that's a very good question, and one that there's a very distinct possibility could happen again in a few weeks, because in Texas, all of the schools are opening back up, and these kids, my son is 10, he is not eligible to be vaccinated, and I could very much see things shutting down after a few weeks when they start getting positive COVID tests in the schools. I think things that I have learned in the last year and a half, I will still set up a school. I will still set up my law office, but they will be in different rooms. Another thing I have learned on the comical side is to make sure I have a shirt on in the morning before my son's teacher calls on Zoom, because I was in that situation. I think now that we know that it is possible, and we did continue to attend church services via Zoom, I continued to do that last year. I did not try to make Christian sit through those, because it's difficult enough to get a child who's 10 years old to sit in church, but trying to get them to sit through a Zoom church session when there's all the distractions of home at the same time is difficult. But I think I would try to find some other way to get him involved with church. They had set up now Sunday school programs, which are very short on Zoom, that are recorded, so he doesn't have to sit there, and we can let him sit down and watch them on his own time and on his own schedule. Things in terms of work, I have learned just how late I can stay up after he goes to bed, because there's a lot of things with work that I cannot do with a 10-year-old talking to me. So I would adjust again my sleep schedule. I think that I would reach out more quickly for help when I needed it. I tried to take on a lot at the very beginning that I probably could not handle. And I learned very quickly that it takes a village, not only in normal times, but certainly during the times of COVID. I think, I don't know what else I would do differently other than try to stay more in touch with family and with friends and try to schedule my time better. I don't know. I'm hoping it doesn't happen again, but again, it's a very distinct possibility.
Very good. If it should, we'll pray for you and for all the other parents. Thank you, Al, for being with us today.
Thank you.
By the way, during most of that, I was trying to listen, and he was holding the phone, as you might expect, and I was right over there trying to corral Christian and convince him that if he was silent, or as close as possible to silent, we could hear his dad better. You can tell I was not terribly successful. And the third parent that we asked is Hillary Burke. So come, share your experiences with us, please, Hillary.
How's that? Can everyone hear me? Awesome. So when I was asked to speak about our family navigating this entirely new concept of distance learning, I thought, oh boy, do I have some stories. I have to start by saying how proud I am of our family as a whole for remaining as sane and as organized as we could possibly be as the world seemed to be turning upside down. I was completely shocked when our schools and our daycare closed as the whole country went into lockdown on March 13th, 2020. I won't forget the date. Hamden Public Schools did an amazing job coming up with a distance learning plan and putting it into action within just a few weeks. And this was all brand new to everyone, so I was very impressed with the school system. Now it was up to my husband and I to become our children's educators. But how, I thought, when they won't even respond when we ask them to pick up their toys or wash up before dinner. Well, Natalie was in 2nd grade and Leland was in preschool when this challenge began. Natalie had just turned 8 years old, and she had to quickly learn how to use and navigate a computer, which was a challenge in itself. She amazed me with her ability to learn how to use a mouse, type on a keyboard, doing the best she could with spelling, and log in and navigate all of these different programs. She had to use Google Classroom for assignments, Zoom for live classes, Lexia was for reading, and Dreambox was for math. There are many programs to learn. I can't believe this was all expected from an 8-year-old. And thinking back, I'm pretty sure when I was 8 years old, my main focus was planning on who to sit with on the bus or who to play with at recess. Natalie had certain assignments that were posted on Google Classroom. Some were asynchronous. We learned what that word meant, which means done on her own time. Some were synchronous, which is live classes on Zoom throughout the day. So the only way we managed to stay organized was to print many copies of the daily classroom schedule and post it all over the house, because who knows what room we'd be working in that day. And I set a lot of reminder alarms on my cell phone. All of these children in class had new important rules to learn and follow, just distance learning etiquette they all had to learn for the first time. Certain things like stay on mute until it's your turn to talk, that was really difficult for them to learn. Keep your body still and keep your laptop still. Don't lay down during class. You should probably be sitting up. Save your snacking for break times. You're not supposed to eat during class either. You have to get dressed. You don't wear pajamas. Wear real clothes, including bottoms. And yes, you still have to brush your teeth and your hair every day. That was asked every morning to me. You don't have to ask to use the bathroom. You can just go down the hall and then come back when you're done. All these things the kids had to learn. There were technical issues like frozen screens and links that didn't work. Microphone and video issues all the time, like I can't hear you, but I can see you. Oh, now I can see you, but I can't hear you. I'm really surprised any learning occurred during the first couple weeks that we were doing this. And there were many distractions at home to deal with. Leland's preschool teacher would send weekly emails, so he would just get some worksheets or activities to do at home. So each child had assignments they were supposed to be working on. We did our best to keep the kids separated. One parent upstairs with Natalie, the other parent downstairs with Leland, but that didn't last too long. We were kind of all over the place. Leland was often interested in participating in Natalie's gym class. He might have made an appearance or two in his underwear in the background, attempting to follow along with exercises. I can't keep clothes on this kid. The dog was a huge distraction. The dog also made appearances in Natalie's class. Or he was barking at the front door at every living thing that walked by the house. At one point, her music teacher thought it would be a great idea to have the kids learn to play the recorder. So it turns out, the dog not only howls at sirens passing by, but at the sound of a recorder. And all of this was happening while my husband was on a virtual work meeting. So the separation between work and home life was non-existent. Both my husband and I attempted to work from home. We converted half of the kids' playroom into a home office. So my husband had the misfortune of stepping on Legos with his bare feet as he entered his office every morning. And I am a pediatric occupational therapist, so I work with children with special needs. The small company I work for quickly put together a plan to offer teletherapy services, which none of us had ever done. It was a huge challenge to adjust to hands-off virtual occupational therapy, and it was also fun and rewarding. I considered each of my sessions a success if I could keep the child engaged and participating, as well as teach the parents and the caregivers strategies to use at home to help their child and help them learn and grow. Luckily, my sessions with children were pretty short, and it was one-on-one, so I really respect the teachers for the very long sessions and the huge groups that they had to deal with. One of the biggest challenges for me during my work was adjusting my treatment plans to help a child. A specific child I'm thinking of, she has cerebral palsy and she's completely blind. So I was used to offering her hands-on assistance and tactile cues to lead her through each activity in therapy, but now I only had the power of my voice to guide her. And her grandmother was an amazing support during this time. She would gather supplies that she needed. She would provide assistance to her. And I'm proud to say we accomplished more than I could have imagined during these teletherapy sessions. And I ended up learning so much when I was thrown way out of my comfort zone. And despite all the chaos with distance learning and teletherapy, it was nice to slow down just as far as our family's general schedule of activities. We're used to weekends full of play dates, birthday parties, gymnastics, cheerleading, and dinner with friends, and so on. but our family's schedule was clear for the first time ever. No future plans in sight. We took this time to get to know each other better and pick up old hobbies like playing piano, painting, doing yoga, and we became very creative with our entertainment. We built a pirate ship out of cardboard boxes. We made Nerf target shooting with stacks of Solo cups. We made a gymnastics exercise circuit around the entire first floor of our house. And we enjoyed many FaceTimes and Zooms with our family and friends too. And I've come to realize the most important things in life are family, friends, and health. And I've never been so grateful for these three things until this pandemic. This experience taught me to not sweat the small stuff, take it one day at a time, and be grateful for my health and the health of my family.
Thank you all for sharing. I think that I can join everyone here in our hopes that we never have to do this again. Kudos to the teachers. Kudos to the parents. Kudos to the grandparents, many of whom thought, well, my time of teaching kids is over. You know, I'm too old for this, and you weren't too old for this kind of thing, were you? Those parents that found that they had to get back into the parenting that they thought they were done with. Wow, what a year. So thank you all. I hope you don't have to do it again. Before we close, you know that every night we've given an opportunity to someone speak about someone who we have lost within the last year or so. And one such person is Joan Gorgas. Now, many of you didn't know Joan, but Mary got to know her pretty well, and she loved camp. The few years she was with us, she loved camp. Mary, come share.
I didn't know Joan terribly well. I'd seen her on the grounds. I would go up and I would say hello to her, and when she did become a member, I would welcome her. But when we were at a Helping Hand meeting, and she came and she joined us. She came in and she sat down during our business meeting. And after the meeting, I'm walking around and I happened to notice these wonderful little note cards that have pictures of the gingerbread on a lot of the cottages here at camp. And I looked at them and I thought, this is so special. And it says Camp Bethel, Haddam, Connecticut, founded in 1878, and it has her initials on the back of it. And this is from 2015. So I purchased them. And being on the membership committee, and at that time we were not using the computer very much, I would use these note cards to send out notes to the people that had applied for membership to explain what the process was going to be. And I went through them very, very quickly, and at some point I decided I was going to reach out to Joan and find out if I could get some more. So I called her, and she was so delighted that I called her, and she said, I would love to donate these cards for membership, and I'm so pleased that you're using them in that fashion. And it wasn't very long afterwards that I received, several boxes of these wonderful note cards. And I used them to send out welcoming to people and notes to people. And I look at this now and I'm kind of sorry that I don't do that anymore, because now it's emails or I'll call someone. But it was really very, very special to know Joan, and it meant a lot to her to make that kind of a contribution. And you're welcome to look at these if you'd like. I don't think there are any more of them around, but it just felt really special to me, and I wanted to share that memory. Thank you.
Those of you who are on the board know that shortly before Joan passed away this last year, she wanted to remember Camp Bethel, a special place for her, and she sent us $20,000. And so we are grateful, not just for that, but for her cards and her caring for us. As we close, rather than close in prayer, I would like to ask Becky and David if they would close us, reminding us as we get ready for this next school year to be prepared for whatever is going to befall us. In other words, keep your lamps trimmed and burning.
And if you want to draw eyes, you draw eyes.
A few days ago, Dave Geppert saw Becky and said, there's a song I really like, and I'm wondering if it could be sung at camp this year. Now, we've learned that when Dave Geppert speaks, we listen, like your stockbroker. So I looked up the song and found that it was a song written in the early 1900s, sort of a combination blues, spiritual kind of song, and it's based on the story Jesus told about the wedding feast that was going to take place, and those who prepared for the feast by having lamps with the necessary amount of oil and with wicks trimmed. So it's based on roughly on that text, which we find in both Matthew 25 and in Luke 12. It's an interesting story we all know. Now, some of us may not be exactly sure how to trim our wicks, since it's a metaphor. How do we trim our wicks? And I would urge you to come to Bible study tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to find the answer to that question as we look further into the incredible Sermon on the Mount. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. 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 The time is drawing nigh. Sisters, don't grow weary. Brothers, don't grow weary. Children, don't grow weary. For the time is drawing nigh. It's our faith that makes us happy. It's our faith that makes us happy. It's our faith that makes us happy. The time is drawing nigh. Sisters, don't grow weary. Brothers, don't grow weary. Children, don't grow weary. For the time is drawing nigh. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. The time is drawing nigh. Sisters, don't grow weary. Brother, don't grow weary. Children, don't grow weary. The time is drawing nigh. Every round goes higher, higher. Every round goes Don't grow weary, brother, don't grow weary. Children, don't grow weary. The time is drawing nigh.
Amen. See you all tomorrow morning.
Oh, that's all.
My hat has to go off too for making it right.
Huh?
My hat goes off too.
Well, you can congratulate me once you've had a verdict tonight.
I'm sure it'll be excellent, but I tried making one once. I made I used to work at a restaurant. We made chicken pot pie and we made a dough for the top of that, but it's making pie.
Yes, yeah, I did the grated. I grated the butter in order to make, I froze the butter, I grated it, I formed the dough, and I let it sit, and I molded the dough, and I put it back in the fridge, and then I put it in the oven. It was
It's not the best, but it's better than what I could do.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Raw. Nice.
It is a nice location. You go see it. Are you a guitar? Yes.
Yeah, go. Bill,
Somebody wants to go see your guitar.
I don't need to play. I just want to take a look at it.